Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and I'm also the author of the book, How to Kill an Addiction, Recovery with God. My book has 20 testimonies of real people who have overcome real life-controlling issues with God's help. So I'd love for you to check that out. And every week, I interview people who have overcome a life-controlling issue with God's help. And this week, my guests are Chad and Katie. Chad and Katie, welcome to Voices of Recovery.
Good morning.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good to have you here. I've been wanting to have you as a guest for some time now, and we were able to work that out. But if you could just tell our audience a little bit about yourselves.
Well, we are married. We've been married for about 30 years, and actually we met at church, and drinking wasn't a part of either of our lives for a long time, but slowly it just kind of crept in. We have 3 children. We live in Missouri. We've started a number of businesses together.
Awesome.
And, overall, we've had a really good life.
Yeah.
Amen. Chad, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, it's just amazing when you look at your life and the path that God's taken you. There's many ups and down roads throughout your life, but
Sure.
when you look to Him and follow Him, it's amazing how He can turn horrible situations into something that is just a blessing to not only you and heals you and your family and your relationships, but others as well.
That's so true. Well, we'll get into your story. But as you said that, Chad, I thought about the vows that we take before God when we stand before God and we ask Him to be part of our marriage, and we say, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, we make that commitment. And here you guys are looking at almost 30 years. Congratulations on that.
Thank
And
you.
like you said, highs and lows, but God is with us through it all.
You bet.
Absolutely.
That's exciting. Well, we'll go ahead and jump into your story. So you mentioned that you met at church and drinking wasn't really a part of your lives in the early years.
No, it really wasn't. It's interesting to see how things happen because, I'd become a Christian in grade school and was always very involved in church, very involved with the youth groups and different things like that. And it wasn't until I went away to college, and then it's interesting. I went to a Christian school thinking, oh, this was going to be great for my spiritual walk and journey. But little did I know there's just as much or more temptation that I saw at this Christian school because there were so many students that had been kind of sheltered their whole life growing up in Christian schools. They get to college and it's like freedom for the first time and they're experimenting with different things. So for me, that's when I started drinking again. And
Okay. Interesting.
So it was not what I expected. You think you're in a Christian environment, it's going to be different, but
Right.
Even addicts out there that are Christians and struggling, it can hit anybody.
Sure.
And we met after we both went to college, and we actually met at church. We were both working with the same youth group, and as youth ministry kind of leaders, even though we were volunteers, we were really challenged to kind of be above reproach and not drink and so forth. And I think Chad had probably discovered earlier in his life that maybe, drinking was not a great thing for him. And I had never really been a drinker. I'd always kind of steered clear of it. I think in my family, I'd seen enough heavy drinking. Although my family is wonderful, I saw that it was a powerful thing early on in life. And I was just like, ooh, well, maybe this is something I want to steer away from. I think God wired me in such a way that I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat and I'm more cautious.
Sure.
And so I had always just chose not to develop a taste for it, I guess.
And Chad, are you more of an adventurous person? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how God brings 2 different people together.
sure.
And I joke, and the one thing I say is we'd definitely be broke if it wasn't for Katie. But Katie definitely wouldn't have experienced what she's experienced without me. So it's really neat how couples and God puts people together that have different qualities about themselves.
That's so good. I love
Yeah.
that.
I'm definitely a look before you leap person, and he's more like, oh, leap and figure it out.
Yeah, don't take me somewhere if we're not planning on buying it, because I don't want to look at anything.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you shared with me that the drinking kind of started to escalate, and that's oftentimes what happens, right? It starts here and then it just levels up once the enemy gets a hold of you. So kind of paint a picture of what that looked like in your life and how things eventually got out of control.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and you never really think about it when you're going through it. But
Yeah.
I can remember some of the first times with church friends, uh, going out and having a beer after golf or going out and doing things like that. And I always loved kind of the way it made me feel. It made me relax. It made me do different things. And what I realized over the time looking back, the years that I was drinking, I mean, when I first started, it was fine. I mean, I'd have my one beer or whatever, and
Mhm.
I go home and no problem.
And we never really kept it at home.
No.
So it for a while was just an occasional thing,
Right.
when he would just be out.
And, I don't want to blame it on where we live, but we live in an area that is known for, boating and bars and going out, and just, it's not a weekend event down here. It's mostly a everyday event where you're on the water, you're going to dinner, you're going to different things like that.
Sure.
And what I realized that, I started drinking and it was fine, but then I kept realizing that I needed more and more of that drink to get the same kind of effect in my mind or feeling or whatever. And, over the years, it continued to grow. And I don't think I realized that I had a problem till probably how long into our marriage? Probably 20 years.
I don't know. It's such a blur.
Yeah, it's so, but it definitely got to the point where I knew when I started hiding it and drinking without Katie knowing it, or I knew it was a problem. It was a problem that I thought that I could control.
Right.
And I tried it, but it just kept getting worse.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Katie, at this time, were you seeing it before he did, or did you kind of realize it at the same time?
I still, even now, even though he's got years of sobriety under his belt, now I still look back and I go, I'm not sure how long it took me to realize, I think I probably didn't realize it at first when he was starting to drink more frequently than I realized, when I thought it was just still occasional after golf type thing. I think I'm a very optimistic and, always think the best kind of person. So I think even if I saw something, I brushed it off as, that's just something else. So I'm not sure that I realized for a long time, but then there was definitely a point where it was obvious. And I think that drove him more into hiding it because it became a real issue. The more I was on him about it, the more he just wanted to hide it, and it forced him more underground. Yeah.
Right. Well, and we don't sit there and analyze our lives. We're raising kids, we're working, we have some businesses. So I mean, life is busy, and you just kind of keep going, and you don't always see what's going on. So it's very understandable to be in that place.
Yeah. And I wasn't along always, like in business, it's very common for people to entertain associates and customers and so forth.
Sure.
And part of that is, you go to dinner, you have a few drinks, and it's not only, it's almost expected or encouraged in some respect. And sometimes I wasn't always along for that. So I didn't see some of the uptick in that.
So, Chad, you mentioned that you got to the point where you were hiding things from Katie, and obviously you realized at that point you had a problem. And I've spoken to many people who have addictions or life controlling issues, and it's not only the monkey on your back that's super heavy and hard to carry, but it's also hiding that monkey, and it just becomes exhausting.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, people that don't have an addiction don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what goes on in people's mind. Like, to Katie, when we would go out some night with church friends or different friends, Chad, please don't drink today. We're going out with people. Well, to her, that makes perfectly good sense. But to
Mm-hmm.
someone who's an addict or an alcoholic, that's like almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what I would do in that situation is I'd go out before we'd go out to dinner and drink as much as we could. So then when I would get to the restaurant, hopefully I didn't overdo it so I wouldn't pass out at the dinner table or whatever, but I
Okay.
wouldn't drink. And it got to the point where the sneaking, the lying, the different things that I did just became overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I sit down with some of these people that come into our place, and I understand it. I understand that most of these people that are struggling with alcohol or drugs, they truly in their hearts want to quit. They truly
Right.
do, but they
Mm-hmm.
can't. They can't. It's something like saying, all right, don't have cancer today, you're going to be better. Well, that's a great way to think about it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible, when you're dealing with that.
Wow. Well, just to let our audience know, you guys have a business called the New Spring Wellness Center, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that as we continue. But prior to the treatment and opening up your own business based on that, were you trying other things to break free? Were you going to AA meetings and things like that, or
Yeah.
trying to gut it out and use willpower to
No,
get?
absolutely. And AA is a phenomenal group. Celebrate Recovery. There's lots of great places out there that has been very successful for a lot of people. And I tried all those groups, and I think they're well worth attending.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's addiction journey is different. And
Absolutely.
I know with me, I would attend the AAs once a day, and for me, it was the cravings that kept me drinking, where literally every morning I'd wake up and wonder, look at my day, when can I start drinking? Do I need to wake up at 3 a.m. to start drinking today because I have a 9 o'clock meeting that I can't drink yet?
Mm.
And I would go to AA every day, and I'd text Katie and say, hey, I'm here, just finished. And she'd give me the thumbs up, and I'd grab the bottle of vodka out of my car and start drinking.
I think he really did want
I did want to quit.
He really did really want to quit, and he was getting increasingly tired of my being on his back about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so by going to AA, he hoped that it would help him. You did enjoy some of the people that you met there. But like in our situation, he went to an AA kind of far from where we live because
I didn't want anyone to know.
he didn't
who
want
I
anyone
was.
to know.
Mm-hmm.
He really wanted to be anonymous.
Right.
And his going, he felt like he could kind of keep me off his back
Mm-hmm.
by saying, "Oh, I went today, check mark."
Right.
In the meantime, and I think probably, hopefully, people watching, some of the people will relate to this. I mean, I was trying everything. I mean, I tried, begging. I tried just not mentioning it and just trying to be a good example. I tried, being mad and kind of punishing him, and he'd wake up going, I wonder what I did yesterday, because she seems kind of mad this morning.
Yeah.
I tried it all, and I kept praying and journaling and just saying, this is not where I thought we would be. For so many years, we had never had alcohol in our house. We didn't
Right.
drink. And I never thought that I would be in a place where this would be a problem and that we would have alcohol in the house and that I would be at a spot where, I didn't want us to go out. And that sort of thing. And God just kept on saying, I don't know, I just kept on going back to the reassurance that God was going to take our story and he was going to make something beautiful out of it. And it felt far from beautiful at times.
Amen. I love that, Katie, because that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so good at it. It's just sometimes hard to wait for all of it to unfold. But I love to hear this perspective from both of you. Chad sharing kind of what it was like and how you were trying so hard and you knew that it was bothering Katie. And Katie, your perspective as a wife of somebody who's struggling. I mean, I really appreciate you both coming on today and sharing candidly, because I think it's so helpful. But let's get back to what you said earlier. You mentioned that not everybody's journey is the same, and we're all created different. God knows us because he made us. And AA may work for some people. Celebrate Recovery may work for some people. But there's not a cookie cutter that this is what everybody with a drinking problem needs to do.
You bet.
Awesome. Okay. So things are getting progressively worse, and we talk about like a rock bottom moment. Share with us a little bit, if you don't mind. And I know we're asking you to be very transparent here, that kind of where you got to that wit's end moment of it's just too much.
Yeah, for me, again, if you're struggling, you understand this. But it was to the point, Michele, where I literally, I remember one Christmas going back to my parents' house with my family, and they were all at home. I got up, drove to the gas station, bought a bottle of vodka. It's about a mile to the house. Drank as much as I could and stuck it in a snowbank. Went back, celebrated Christmas Eve with the family. Got up the next morning at 3 a.m. and drove to see where I put it, and I couldn't find it. I literally walked in the snow for an hour looking to find that vodka, because it was 3 a.m. The stores weren't open.
Wow.
And when I found it, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. And I looked at myself and I'm like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And basically just started crying and started drinking. And I'm like, I can't quit, Lord. What is it? Why can't I quit? And that's when I realized that if I didn't do something, that one, I was probably going to lose my family or my life, because I was drinking up to a half gallon of vodka a day. And my health was bad. My liver was bad. And I could not quit. And I wanted to quit more than anything. I couldn't quit. There were times when I'd bring a bottle of vodka to Katie and say, go hide this. But if I need it, you need to give me some, because you got to make sure when you're doing it that you're doing it. People that drink as much as me, it can be very dangerous. And, but for me, my mind was so powerful where, I was going to quit today. I'd get all excited, and then that day would come, and then I'd say, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'd put a line on my bottle. Okay, I'm only going to drink this much. I can stay sober. I'm not going to pass out. I'll get a good feeling, but I'll be good. And I'd get to that line and just cross it out and do it again tomorrow. And it was a never-ending battle for me, even though I wanted more than anything to quit.
Wow, we can really feel just your frustration and the heaviness of all of that. And when you have a relationship with God, it's a beautiful thing, right? To know God and to understand who Jesus is for you. But many times when we're Christians and we're going through things like this, we can just feel so guilty, and we can get into so much condemnation and just beat ourselves up. It can be kind of a catch-22 situation for us.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to be anonymous, because we still did go to church every Sunday. We were in small groups and Bible studies, and some of my close friends knew I had a problem. And one of them from Chicago, he would even fly down here to the Ozarks because he was worried about me dying. I mean, he was that worried about me where he would fly down here, make up an excuse why he was coming down here just to check up on me. And but yeah, I mean, it's a lie about what drugs in your mind make you feel like. And the main thing for me is when I was down as bad as I was, I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, there's no way that I can stop this. There's nothing. Even praying and crying to God, in your mind, even though you know how powerful God is,
right,
and he can do anything. As an addict, I didn't see that. I just saw, this is my life. I'm not going to make it, and there's no hope.
I think that is really sad when you get kind of resigned to the fact that maybe this is what our life is going to look like.
Right.
honestly, I mean, I can't imagine. I feel for people who are not believers in Jesus Christ, because I look back and I'm like, gosh, that was such a thing that I know for me that I really hung on to, was that relationship with him, and the comfort and the strength and just that sense of hope that I could hang on to. And I really feel for people that don't have that, because I don't know how people get through hard things, and we all have hard things.
Right. I often think the same thing when I'm going through something. At least I know God is there. And what you said about going to church and kind of hiding things, I feel like that's where a lot of Christians live. It's like, I can't let my guard down. I can't let people see the real me, the struggles that I'm having. And that's so unfortunate, because sometimes that prevents you from getting the help that you need because you're pretending.
Yeah. And our friends are great. And I think many of them had no idea, I think everybody would see maybe once in a while, when we'd be out, that he'd have too much or whatever. But I think they kind of brushed it off, thinking the best, saying, oh, well,
He
sometimes,
overdid it today.
sometimes people do that, once
Right.
in a while. They had no idea how frequent it was. And so they just didn't know, a lot of them.
Sure. Well, as believers, when we're crying out to God and he doesn't answer when we want him to answer in our timing, so many times he's working behind the scenes. And there's a song about it, that he is working even when we can't see it. He's working. And it sounds like he was working behind the scenes, and not only preparing to find freedom for you, but also setting the stage for you to go on and help others. But, Katie, one thing that you mentioned is that you said that, is this the way it's going to be, right? Because you said you were an optimistic person.
Mhm.
I am too. I can relate to that. It's like, Pollyanna, right? It's all going to be okay. When you know God, you can definitely believe that.
Oh, yeah.
Then to that point where, if it doesn't change, can I endure this? And that's a tough question.
It is a tough question. And I guess I just felt like, it just made me lean on God more. I loved Chad dearly. We were committed to each other in marriage, and I just kept leaning on God, and I wasn't gonna give up that. I could only control what I could control, which was my
Absolutely.
reactions to things,
Yes.
and my own relationship with God.
That's a freeing place to get to, when you realize that you can only control and change yourself.
You bet.
So, Chad, we spoke earlier, and you told me that you kind of got to this point with God that if this is not going to change, you can't move forward. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, after Katie had found out that, I've been going to AA for a while and still nothing was working, I finally sat down with her and I said, listen, I can't live this way. If, and there's people at AA that struggle every day and are successful, and I give them credit, because I wasn't able to be that. But I told her, I said, listen, if I have to go to AA or celebrate recovery every day or twice a day like some of these folks do, Katie, I don't want it. That's not the life I want to live. And I didn't know if there was a better way. I didn't, but I just knew, me driving out on the other side of the lake every day at 10 a.m. and sitting through an hour AA meeting, for me, I could not do that. I said, if there's no other way, I don't know what we're going to do.
Right. So sometimes we kind of have to get to that moment of desperation. God allows us to, and he's God and I'm not. It's maybe not the way I would have done it, but my results aren't as good as his.
Yeah.
Right.
So at that point where you were really just kind of at your wit's end, Chad, it sounds like maybe that rock bottom that a lot of people refer to, somebody approached you with a tool that some were using to break free. Talk about how that was introduced to you and kind of your initial thoughts with it.
Yeah, so it was interesting. My friend that would come down here and check up on me had also had, and I hate to say that not as bad of alcoholic as I was because it's all bad.
Mm.
He's a research. He does tons of research on natural things, and he had found this treatment that uses NAD. That kind of so what happens again when you're an addict, and you find this like when people take normal sleeping pills, they work great in the beginning, but as time goes on, you need more and more of that pill to get the same effect. And
Okay.
it's not the pill changing, it's your brain changing. So that made sense to me. I'm like, he's like, Chad, what's happening to you is you're changing the pathways in your brain or destroying them because of how much alcohol. Well, I found this treatment that's all natural, and he was talking with Katie mostly,
Mhm.
and I didn't believe it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. It's too expensive. It's not worth it. And finally, Katie's like, well, I called him. We can do it. And she said, we'll go next week. And I said, no, if we're going to do this, I'm going now.
Yeah.
Because I knew how an addict thought. I would talk myself out of it just like I
Right.
did every single day with drinking. But
Mhm.
I knew in my mind that if something didn't work, I knew I would be dead.
And he wanted to hope that something
Right.
would do it.
I didn't believe
You know.
anything could change me. Even God, you deny God, and I know He can do everything, but you don't understand. As an addict, your mind is so deceived
Yes.
from that substance that things that other people look at and it makes sense to, it doesn't to us. It doesn't.
That's so good. And like you said, unless you're in that position, you don't understand it. But you understand it, Chad, because you've walked through it. And Katie, you understand what it's like to be married to somebody who has gone through it. So you guys make a great team.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the NAD, Chad. Can you tell what that means and kind of put it in layman's terms for us, if you would?
Sure. NAD is something that's natural to your body, and in this particular type thing, it's under the care of a doctor, administered by a nurse, but it's replenished by IV. And so it's natural things that are replenished to your body with the idea that you have made changes to your brain, and it's something that works on the neurotransmitters in your brain and kind of makes those repairs into, like, the way we understood is kind of reboots your brain back to the pre-addicted state. And somewhere in that process, in that repair, it's like you get free of the cravings, or at least that's what Chad found.
I didn't believe it at all. Again, I
always loved natural stuff.
She
He was
liked
skeptical.
I
Yeah.
didn't think it would work, and but again, me being as skeptical as I am, I needed something to hope for. But I also wanted proof, and this guy that we talked about showed me proof, showed me brain scans of people that gone in before treatment and after treatment, and even me, not as a doctor, could see the difference in these brain scans. And talking to people that have been through it, that's what made me decide it's something that I should try. Still not believing it was going to work.
Well, I think we do become skeptical, and it's like, well, that's too good to be true.
Right.
It's the old idea of snake oil, right? We're going to try this, we're going to try that. But I love what you said about it being all natural, because I'm into that too, Katie. And I realized that God put all healing in the garden. And we're talking about the original Garden of Eden. He put what we needed for healing, to sustain us, food, everything. But we know that because of sin, we live in a fallen world. So our food doesn't give us the vitamins and nutrients that it should, because of our environment and a lot of different reasons that I really don't want to get into today. But I love the fact that it is all natural, because that's the way God created things to be.
Right.
Yeah. And that's one big thing with our doctor too. She's like, everything God has created on this earth is things that can heal us.
Yes.
It's man that takes it and screws it up and adds stuff to get you addicted to different things.
Absolutely. So from what I understand, it's a vitamin that's going in an IV, because when you take vitamins by mouth, your body doesn't absorb them all.
Yeah, it's vitamins, amino acids, and this NAD, which stands.
It's three different parts. You start the day with three different things.
Okay.
Yeah, but the idea is that it's kind of nourishing the body and then crossing that barrier into the brain to work on the brain. And I like for him, when we did it, I could see Chad is a super creative person. I mean, he's been an entrepreneur his whole life, and the alcohol had really kind of squelched that creativity.
Wow.
And after, a few days, 5, 6 days of getting this natural stuff replenished, I could see what I describe as the light bulb going back on because I hadn't seen that in a while.
Yes.
And I could tell that he was coming alive again and like thinking about things, other things.
And it's weird again, unless you've experienced it. When I talk to people that are looking to come into do this type of treatment, for me, it was how I explain it. It was just like fog lifting from my head on like day 5 or 6, where, like Katie said, I had hope again. I wanted to live. I could think clearer. And again, to a lot of people, they don't get it because they haven't experienced it.
Right.
If you look at where I was back then and even looked at my pictures, and it pictures say 1,000 words. I was over 100 pounds heavier because I was killing myself from alcohol. I still don't work out. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm more active than I've ever been, but it's amazing what happens to your body when you can stop throwing poison in it.
Wow.
And how God can replenish it and give you your mind back that, I really thought that I would never get back.
Wow. That is incredible. And I love the way that God restores in many areas, restores your mind, restores your body, restores your relationship. Not that you were apart, but just made it back to where it should be.
Right. Yeah.
So so kind of walk us through it, if you would, Chad. You're in the IVs for how many days, how many hours per day?
So it's different. And again, it's really interesting. And maybe if people want to know about this, we could actually get our doctor on that's a lot more medical and can explain it scientifically. I'm just going to do it the way I know, but
Good, because that's how we'll understand it.
Okay, so there's so many different and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so many different pathways in your brain, and it's amazing that alcohol is one path or a certain pathways. Opioids are a certain pathways. Heroin, cocaine. There's the dopamine. There's people that suffer from depression. They're all different.
Okay.
So in my case, it was pretty simple. Where when you go over your medical
Simple from the aspect that it was just one substance.
Okay.
When I went into treatment, I mean, because all the NAD are formulated differently by a compounding pharmacy depending on what it is you're struggling with. And so they would get mine was a 10-day treatment. I'd get in the morning. I'd sit in a private room, and what they would do is start me with a bag of vitamins, just a 500 milliliter bag of vitamins that would basically primes your body. And like you said before, IV is the most effective way to get nutrients and vitamins into your body because it doesn't go through the gut. That's why when you get in an ambulance or a hospital, the first thing they do is they start an IV in case you need anything. So I got that, and then they would do a push of glutathione, which is a detoxifier of your liver. So no matter what type of addiction you are, addict you are, it passes through your liver. And your liver is something that cleanses you, cleanses everything. So that would take about 45 minutes, and then they'd start the NAD, and that would drip nice and slow as it's replenishing the pathways in your brain and the nutrients and everything for 6 to 8 hours. Everybody's a little bit differently. In the beginning, it takes a little longer.
There again, it's not like a cookie cutter, approach.
Right.
They were able to customize it kind of to Chad and the things that were in his medical history, but suffice it to say that for him, it was a 10-day thing of replenishing these natural things that kind of rebooted that brain. And somewhere in there, he found the freedom from the cravings, that, that mental performance kind of came back, and the clarity. I think
Wow.
You can't
hope was kind of-
explain it though. You can't explain it. Again, because unless you talk to other people that have been through it, but even Katie doesn't. She gets it because she's seen me live it.
Right.
But I mean, the days I wake up now compared to the way they were, you can't explain the difference.
And I think he was super. Upon leaving, he felt great, and
I didn't tell anybody for a year and a half.
Yeah, he was still skeptical.
Because I'm like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to last.
Okay.
Literally, my kids knew I quit drinking, but we didn't tell them what I did. We told nobody because I still didn't believe it.
Wow. So at the year and a half marker, what changed? Your mind said, okay, this is it. This works.
I kept doing research, and I kept up with people that I had met in treatment, and just doing phenomenal. And and I'm like, Katie, and again, you got to understand where we were before this. It was bad. It was as bad as you get. If God can use this to save my life, our marriage, our family, we need to do something. This is, like Katie said, we've had many businesses here that we've sold, and this has never been something that we ever envisioned in our lives, you know. But we really felt that God calling us to do something like this.
Right.
That was how we felt like God was going to make our story beautiful. Like, because we had spent so much time in the shadows and hiding it and not talking about it and so forth. And then when we felt like he was really kind of restored and healed, and all the, kind of almost like a cancer that was in, miraculous remission.
Right.
We were like, maybe this is how God's going to make it beautiful. We've just got to come out of the shadows and
it was
talk
hard.
about it and give people hope.
It's very embarrassing, that where we live, and this is a small community, and we've been here for 30 years. When, Katie and I come out and I share our story, it's definitely a humbling experience. But I can tell you, by us sharing our story, it is amazing how many people have come to us and said that they're struggling, or they know somebody that's struggling. And it's really been neat to see how God has used this place to just, help people. And the community that we have now with people who have gone through the program, one of them's our nurse now, it's neat how God is changing people's lives.
Absolutely.
We felt like, like when Chad was going to AA and the various, there was so much hopelessness. There was so much, people hanging on just by their fingernails, or feeling like, they had lost so much. They had lost businesses, their finances, their homes, they had legal problems. And there was such a sense of hopelessness. And that I think has been the neatest part, in terms of just being able to tell people that there is hope for recovery that can be beautiful and healthy. And people need to hear that, because they're
and the neatest thing too is, we've had people that have been through 6 or 7 treatments, and it just hasn't been successful. And you can, and again, everybody's different. There's no magic pill. It's all, what God can do in people's lives. But you can lock people away for 30 days in a rehab, but if you're not addressing the real reasons that have been affected, they're still going to battle it every day. And we had a nurse down at a clinic we trained under down in Louisiana that said to Katie, she had been sober for 5 years prior to working there, and then did the treatment, and she said, what was it?
She said that it changed the quality of her sobriety. And I think that's the thing, that, there's so much more to recovery than just merely being sober.
Right.
You want it to be meaningful, where you feel great, where you're connecting both with God and with your family members. There's that restoration there. You can take that energy that you were
Mhm.
putting into your addiction before, and you can contribute to your community and to your family and to your business. And
Absolutely.
it's really been neat because we look back and we go, gosh, God was really preparing us all
Yes.
along.
Yes.
Like we've had many businesses together where our business was always to bring something, to make something better, or to make it known and bring it to the market. Well, we don't
Mhm.
produce a product anymore, but we felt like after Chad's experience, we're like, this sort of thing was not in the area that we live, and we're like, well, maybe this is something that we really felt called to bring to our community.
Right.
And like I said, it's not a product, it's more of a service. But so amazing how God just prepared us along the way. And just without God, there'd be no way that we would be now talking on the radio about our story, or
Absolutely.
on an interview like today.
Absolutely. So many things I want to talk about, you guys. First of all, I can totally relate to what you're saying about coming out of the shadows and telling your story, because that's definitely what I have done in my book and just what I'm doing with Voices of Recovery. And I never saw myself doing this, but I look back and I see how God has prepared me and how God has prepared you. And that season of preparation can be difficult. It can be frustrating because we want something to happen, but it's so necessary. Preparation time isn't wasted time at all because it brought you to where you are today. And Chad, you mentioned somebody came to you and she had been through 6 or 7 treatments.
Yeah, it was a gentleman.
Oh, a gentleman. Okay, by that you mean 6 or 7 other kinds of treatments?
Yeah,
Okay.
rehab. 30-day rehabs each time, 72 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And, in his case, it wasn't long when he would leave the very structured environment of an inpatient rehab that he would find himself in a liquor store or a bar or whatever, because some of the things that had changed in his brain hadn't been addressed.
Yes.
And that was, when somebody's in a position like that and they have not been successful 6 or 7 times, imagine the hopelessness there.
Right.
They're like, nothing's going to work.
And again, rehab does work for some people. So
you bet.
Cookie cutter. This isn't for everybody, but it can definitely help some people. And that's why we want to talk about it today. Right. I like what you said, Katie, about the woman who said the quality of her sobriety, the quality of her life was improved. And I think, you can not drink, but are you still obsessing over it? Are you still thinking about it all the time? Are you white knuckling it, trying not to? And was she the one that you mentioned? I read some of the testimonials on your website that went to a party or an event and saw alcohol and was like, wow, that doesn't even look good.
No, that was somebody else. But yeah, that really spoke to us when we were considering doing this NAD. Is somebody told us who was currently doing it. Yeah, that she went to a restaurant and she said she looked around and she was like, oh my God, she saw people drinking and she wasn't thinking, wow, that looks great. I wish I could do that. Poor me. Right. I can't do it. And we were like, oh, wow, that really spoke to Chad, that you could be around it and not be thinking, wow, that looks great.
That is huge. That is huge. I love it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were there 10 days. The treatments lasted like 8 hours a day, depending.
Yeah, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day, up to 10 sometimes.
Okay, so
it just depends on the person.
I'm just gonna put this out there. So you say, okay, 10 days, 6 to 8 hours a day, and it is not cheap.
No.
Is it worth it? Right?
So my treatment
probably have that argument.
No, I mean, again, that as an addict, I think of every excuse why I can't do something. Yes. Our treatment cost me $15,000, and I kept saying, Katie, we can't afford it. We can't do it. And she's like, Chad, we have to do something. We have a credit card. We have a rainy day fund. And
Right.
again, honestly, and I get it. I get how expensive it is, and I understand that. But I was lucky enough that I never got a DWI. I never
Mhm.
killed anybody. I never did jail time because
Mhm.
I'm telling you, one of those, and that's your treatment.
Right.
And it's amazing when you look back. And I actually have an app that kind of invests money for me every day based on what I would have spent on alcohol.
Okay.
And you hit this button every day. There's my 15 bucks, 15 bucks, 15 bucks.
Hmm.
And it's amazing, not only financially,
Right.
how much money you spend on your substance,
Hmm.
but when you think about your mental clarity and what you get accomplished during the day that you never would have,
Hmm.
it's really a no-brainer when you think of it logically. But again, as an addict, I understand that there's all these red flags.
Yeah,
Sure.
all these excuses, but it's true. It's you know there's people do they lose their businesses, they lose their marriages, they
Right.
end up in legal trouble, and all those things have consequences, both financially and emotionally, and
Mhm.
all those sorts of things.
So true. I interviewed somebody for Voices of Recovery who had a $1,000 a week addiction to pain pills.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
It doesn't take long to get to 15,000
no.
with that kind of addiction. And I
Yeah.
really don't think there's a price you can pay for your health, not only your physical health, but your mental health, your marriage. You're there for your kids, your family, and on it goes. So something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you spent a year and a half of just kind of making sure that this was going to stick. And it's
Yep.
my understanding, Chad, that you don't have to go through this treatment multiple times unless
No.
relapse.
Yeah. So, and again, that's something that I didn't understand. I didn't believe it. I'm like, there's no
Mhm.
way. But it's interesting when you listen to the doctor and how this stuff works.
Mhm.
Uh, Once your pathways and receptors are rebuilt, they rebuild them back to what you were like before you were addicted. So it helps eliminate the cravings, the different things that you were suffering from.
Mhm.
Unless you use a substance again, they don't go away. And I can tell you it's been almost 4 years for me, and I haven't done anything. And we have several patients. We've been doing this for 2.5 years now,
Hmm.
and we have patients not for alcohol, for other things that will come in monthly, just for more of the dopamine formula that helps with business and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
no, it's a one time, and you don't need to come back.
Incredible. You also have an addiction counselor on site, is that correct?
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's such a neat thing because in our case, doing something that may take 10 or 14 days or something, on an outpatient basis, that's a relatively short time. It's enough time to evidently do that repair to the brain.
Right.
However, it's a really short time to address what can
Habits.
be decades
Right.
worth of habits and
Yes.
trauma and that sort of thing. And so the addictions counselor can really help people come up with a plan for success
Mhm.
after that 10 to 14 days. What is that life going to look like?
Right.
Dream a little bit of what they can use their newfound energy for now that it's
Mhm.
not all consumed by getting and hiding and everything. And I think that's so important,
Sure.
that they have that plan and that they really dig into it.
I pulled something from your website that I'd like to read for our audience, and it says, "We believe God created our natural world and that people are the culmination of that creation. People matter to God and to us." And it sounds like you really treat your patients as individuals who are created by God, and you partner with God to create the best plan for them that's going to bring freedom and restoration.
You bet. You bet. We think that, we believe, and of course we don't force it on anyone, but we really believe that that spiritual aspect is so important because even if you are sober, everybody has things that are stressful or they experience grief or whatever. But, they, by connecting with God, we have something else to reach for instead of a substance. And
Yeah.
so, we offer to start every day with prayer. We encourage people to really explore that relationship with God.
And our counselor's a Christian. We don't hide our faith or try to, squelter. Everybody knows when they walk in here that this is something that God led us to do.
Amen. Well, a lot of times when you go to a physician, it's all about your body, but we are a spirit, a soul, and a body. And it sounds like you're addressing all parts of us. And that makes it more likely that there's going to be lasting freedom and healing.
Yeah. It's amazing, like I said, that, the people over the last 2 years, these are our friends. It's like a whole new group of people that stop by the clinic, all the time. And it's just really neat to see how God has changed their lives. And people that were found passed out in parking lots at a bar, who's now one of our nurses. And, when she came into treatment, it was amazing. She videotaped every single day and put it up online because she wanted, she was the exact opposite of me. I wanted to be anonymous. She wanted everyone to know what she was doing. And
Nice.
It's just neat to see how God, once you're not taking that substance and taking away from his presence, what he can do in your life.
Oh yeah, it's so amazing. People, like I say, contributing to their community, finding new passions, connecting with their families in new ways.
Right.
That's been so rewarding. It's so worth telling our story, I guess.
For sure. I'm sure that all the tears that you cried are worth, I think there's a verse in the Bible, I know there is, that when you sow in tears, you reap a harvest. And I see that happening over your lives. And it's so beautiful. I heard somebody say recently that sometimes our season feels more difficult than it should because it's not just about our breakthrough, but it's about the breakthrough of others. And as I was preparing to interview you guys today, I thought about that. It's like your breakthrough was difficult to achieve, but it wasn't just about your breakthrough. It was about other people. And now you're carrying them. You're providing a tool. You can't fix anybody, and neither can I.
Right.
But you're providing a tool that will help some people when all else seems to have failed. And I absolutely love what you're doing. I love how God has restored your lives, and now you're bringing that hope to other people, and that is pure gold.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys live in Lake of the Ozarks, and that's, for those of you who don't know, located in central Missouri. And you traveled to Indianapolis to get the NAD treatment. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. There's a few, several, probably 5 treatment centers right now around the country.
Only 5. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably more and more coming up, but when we did it, there wasn't even 5. But it's just, we traveled 12 hours and it was worth every second of it.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So the Lake of the Ozarks is kind of centrally located in the United States. I will be sharing your website on my Voices of Recovery page after this airs so that people can check it out, learn more about it, see the testimonials, pray about it, see if this is a good fit for you. I'm not here today to do an infomercial on your business or on NAD, but I just want to share your story of hope with other people and put the tool out there. And if there's somebody watching that could benefit from this, then praise God. That's what we want to see.
Absolutely. And like you said, everybody's a little bit different. There's lots of options out there. And the one thing I want to tell people that are watching this, if you're struggling, I don't care how many times you failed or whatever, with God, you can do anything. And there is hope. There is hope for a better life.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to have you speak out, Chad, to that person, but you did that. Katie, what would you say to the husband or wife who is maybe struggling right now because their partner has an addiction or alcoholism? What would you say to encourage that person today?
I would encourage them to focus on their own, their own spiritual connection with God. I know that was the thing that really, brought me through.
Mm.
And that there's really hope, that there's hope not only for that, for that person to find recovery, their partner, their spouse, but that you can have that restoration in your own relationship
Yeah.
too. That also, all those things are a process, but that can really happen. And you can get to the other side of it as a couple too.
Well, you both are living proof of what God can do, and hope really comes from him.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Absolutely. Well, bless you guys. Bless your marriage and your family and your business. And again, I will be posting the information. And if somebody wants to reach out, your contact information will be on the website if they have further questions.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Michele.
sharing people's stories of recovery.
It's my
that's
pleasure.
so important.
I love to do it.
All right.
Well, it's been so awesome to connect with you guys, and I love your story. And thank you again for being a guest today on Voices of Recovery.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye. I just love the way that God restores, and I love how he doesn't waste anything. I'm not wearing it right now, but I have a necklace that says, God wastes nothing. And it's so true. And all of the experiences that they had, the good and the bad, God is now using that to help other people. So if this is something that you want to check out, there's absolutely no pressure. I'm just giving information, putting it out there, because this is something that definitely changed their lives. And I love the part where he talked about his creative juices were flowing again and the light bulb came back on. And that is so beautiful. So I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go on their journey with God. If you're new to our page, I'd love it if you would give us a like or a follow so you don't miss any of this content. And if you feel led, please share this message out today, because I'm sure there's somebody on your page who needs to hear what Chad and Katie had to say today. So thank you again for watching. We'll see you next time on Voices of Recovery. Bye-bye.